Hello, this is the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show, and I am your co host, Judy Forder, and I am here with my co host in peace, Miss Kris Burke. Today's topic calling out guilt so you can breathe. And we are live on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. Someday that will be smoother. Now, Kris, I have to tell you, I woke up with I don't know if there's any Grey's Anatomy fans out there, but the Meredith Grey voiceover in my head. So this is not something we discussed. But you joked about being in 2040. Here we are.
Here we are.
It felt foundational to start with a definition of guilt.
Yeah.
So here we are. Guilt as a noun. The fact of having committed a specified or implied offense or crime. Guilt as a verb. Make someone feel guilty, especially in order to induce them to do something. Yes.
Oh, it's right there.
It's right there. Interesting, right? Yeah. So then I went a little deeper because if Stacy, if you're out there listening, I figured you would enjoy this. Guilt is associated with the prefrontal cortex, and that's where we house logical thinking, and which conscience. Affects, and say again?
And conscience.
And conscience. Is that my conscience? Okay. And that affects the limbic system. So what's the limbic system? It's a complex system of nerves and networks in the brain concerned with instinct. Oh my gosh, instinct. Where does instinct put us? Anybody who's following the show?
Zone 1.
Dun, dun, dun. So guilt commonly stimulates anxiety. Boom.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done for the day.
Yeah. Mic drop, boom, off the stage. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, guilt's amazing. We were talking, as we'd always do, we talk ahead of time to kind of get the juices flowing so that it can be working in the background and we can have something brilliant pop forward when we sit here with you. And we were talking about all the ways that you feel guilt and how we might feel guilt for long periods of time about things that, clearly we were not responsible for. But as children, we, first of all, we're really literal. So if somebody says, you did this, or you made me feel this way, then we literally think, oh my God, I did that. Right. So, walk up to a depressed person and try to make them happy and tell me, is it possible to make somebody feel a certain way? No. And I've been the depressed person. So anybody who's depressed out there, I'm not picking. I've been that person. We can't make somebody else feel anything. But as children, we didn't know that. So we might be carrying guilt about, everything from being born unexpectedly, right? Unexpected children might feel guilty about, oh, my parents didn't really want me. I hear that a lot from people. Or we might feel guilty about having to put a pet down or, all kinds of things that really, there's no need for us to be carrying that energy. But what's the problem with carrying the guilt energy, Judy?
For my experience, guilt is the sister to shame.
Yeah.
Because when we are feeling guilty about something, for me, that just kicks open the door for shame to pop its head back up and be like, psst, come on back down. Yeah. Come on back down to the pit of shame. Yeah. This is where you're comfortable.
Yeah. This is what you deserve, right? Guilt is a big thing about what we deserve. And so somewhere in our mind, we're keeping, in lots of places in our mind, we're keeping track of our sort of good deeds and our bad deeds or the perception of them. And then we might say, oh, my heart desires. And we might say, oh, my heart desires to go climb Mount Everest, which, by the way, mine does not, just to be clear. I don't want, I don't want to find myself hiking up that mountain. But we might say my heart desires that. And then guilt will come in and say, Yeah, but you're going to have to do it without an oxygen tank because you don't deserve to have a wonderful experience. And of course, I'm exaggerating and oversimplifying, but if only 10% of our belief system and our thinking is actually conscious, and 90% of it is beneath our consciousness or subconscious, then we often don't know what conclusions we've drawn about what we can have and can't have, what we deserve and don't deserve.
Yeah. And guilt activates our judge.
Yeah.
And boy, do we like to judge.
Mm.
But, when we fall into, it's funny because in the definition it said it's the duty of the prosecution to prove the prisoner's guilt. And we talked about being in that prison of shame.
Mm.
It's our judge is what determines whether or not we're worthy of something.
Yes.
And when we're carrying guilt and feeling, Christina, I don't know if you watch this show, but my niece apologizes for everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the period at the end of her sentences.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been on her since she was little. And I started talking to her, and I have clients that do the same. And it's like, whatever you say, when you say you're sorry, you need to finish it up for I'm sorry for existing.
Right.
Because that's what you're doing. You're basically saying, I'm sorry for existing and taking up space.
Right.
And no one deserves to feel that way. Everyone is here for a purpose. Everyone is here for a reason.
Right.
It's guilt that keeps us in that pit.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
last week we mentioned that grace was the stepping stool out of shame.
Mm-hmm.
Grace takes us to guilt. So we're one step higher.
Yeah. Yeah. Guilt is better than shame.
Yes.
At least it's a little more active, right? So it's a little more like you're actually involved in it, whereas shame is just kind of you're down. You are just down. And there's no life force energy running through you. And guilt, there's a little bit more energy, enough to tell yourself all the things that are wrong with you. All the things that you did bad.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but that's energy moving.
Mm-hmm.
It's energy moving.
Yeah,
Because
well,
seeing what you're doing bad or wrong, then there's a flip side to that.
exactly.
And if you pay attention, if you can pull that subconscious to the conscious, then you can say, okay, show me what I've done right.
Right.
And that's another stepping stool. That's
Mm-hmm.
how we start to get out of guilt. In the spiritual world, I was taught early on guilt is a wasted emotion. It doesn't serve anyone.
Mm-mm.
It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve the person because, guilt is not only self-inflicted. Guilt is something we put on other people. And it's
Yeah,
you.
blame and guilt are two sides to the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it's used to manipulate. Other times we inflict guilt and don't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think of my little sister when she was born. My father always joked that she's the reason we lost our TV room because she took it, that became her room. So for years and years and years, it would come up at family functions. Oh yeah, well, you're the reason we lost the TV room. And little did we know, she carried that guilt. I mean, we were grown ass adults before she was able to speak the fact that, yes, we did it jokingly, but she took it very seriously and made her feel like she wasn't wanted.
Right.
Laura, I hope you don't mind me talking
Right.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing about the childhood, the way the child mind works.
Mm-hmm.
We're sponges and we think everything that we're being told is truth because we're asking questions, right? We don't know anything. We have this awareness. We sense things,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we're asking like, what's that? What is it called? What does it do? How does it work? Constantly. And we are definitely under the impression that what the people are saying around us is, essentially gospel. I mean, we can depend on this. This is the information and wisdom that we need to navigate our lives.
Yes.
Right. So we pull that in and we're like, wow, this is gold, man. I got to keep it all. And it's not until much later that we often learn, there's a lot of false gold in there.
Yes,
There's a lot of coal.
I'm speaking out of turn about my niece and my sister, so I'll share a story that goes right along with that. My father, we believe what they say is truth. I go off to kindergarten, and we're talking, ducks come into the classroom. I don't know why, whatever. And I begin to tell the girl sitting next to me that ducks have really long legs that extend to the bottom of the pond. And then when they come out, the legs fold up under them. And she was like, no, they don't. I was like, yes, they do. And we got into this argument over ducks. They had to call my parents. My father told me that. Just flippantly, we're walking around the lake, and I asked about the ducks, and that's what he said, and that stuck. It's not like he
Yeah.
said it over and over and over again. I
Right.
took it as gospel.
Right.
My kindergarten teacher was concerned.
Oh, that's so sweet, right? But yeah, that's such a perfect example of how people can tell us things. We don't have a context for knowing if something makes sense or not. And in terms of whether it feels right to us, we learn pretty quickly that we can't trust our own feelings, our own intuition, because we get in trouble for doing what our intuition says to do. Our intuition says, oh, that's a pretty flower, go over and pick it. And then we get yelled at because it was somebody's prize rose or, whatever this. So we learn really quickly, like, no, we better find out what the rule is. I can't actually listen to my internal senses. So people can tell us anything. And a lot of times it's harmless. So, we're teasing the kid, like we're having fun with them. But these kids, as kids, we don't have the filters or the reference. So we take that information on, and that's the foundation that we build our lives on. By the time we're 7 years old, basically our foundation is complete. And now we're going to go live on it.
And that's why at Masterful U, the work we do is getting back to the point of origin.
Mm-hmm.
When do you remember first feeling that emotion?
Right. Right.
This
And
might be
hopefully there were ducks involved because that would be fun and pleasant.
What did you say?
I said, hopefully there would be ducks involved in when it got, because woo, that's my painful belief.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like this might be a good time to pull up the map in case anybody's watching for a first time.
Yeah. Yeah. Good idea.
Excellent.
Thank you. Yeah. Here's the map. So, we can talk about the little tiles kind of to the left and the right, for the far left and far right are kind of like stairs emotionally that we would climb to get from our instincts into our intellect. And then we would actually go down to the lower right side because we actually change systems to get to intuition, sort of like a right brain, left brain thing. We actually change which system we're relying on, which kind of system we're relying on. And we move over to intuition, where we've just got the courage to say, gee, I wonder if there's something that I don't know that's affecting my life experience and my choices. Right. So we have the courage to start asking questions. Because on the left-hand side, we're really 100% relying on what we've already learned. We're forecasting it into the future. And on some level, we're kind of convinced that we know everything that we need to know. Right? We use a lot of words like all men, or, all people who drive this car, or we have a lot of rules in our minds about the way the world works and about the way people work. And it's really all based on that early 0 to 7 framework,
Yeah,
which I like to, sorry, I just want to say the crayons thing. I find it helpful because a lot of times people are like, oh, come on. I said this, I'm not living from my beliefs from 0 to 7. I don't even know what I believed then, and I didn't know very much, and God, it would be terrifying to think that I was living based on those beliefs. But actually, in that range is when we're the most open to learning, and we are like sponges, and we're learning, learning, learning constantly through experience, which is how we learn the best, which is why that's what we do at Masterful U. And basically, as we go along, we've got a box of crayons with us, symbolically, as kids. And every time something happens that we haven't seen before, we pull out the crayons and we draw ourselves a little representative symbol and we attach some emotion to it and we file it away. And if it's a happy emotion, then you can be sure that thing exists, a powerfully happy emotion, pleasurable, where there's peace. You can be sure that you've got that in your life somewhere as a place of pleasure, as something that you enjoy. And if it's a powerfully negative emotion, you can be sure that a lot of how you've built your life is around trying to avoid ever coming into contact with that situation again.
Yeah. And even though you're living in the same house, you have very different experiences. It
Right.
wasn't until we were older and me and my three siblings were sitting around talking about times growing up. I didn't realize how different it was for my brother and my sisters,
Yes.
because everyone was treated differently. I mean, there were some consistent rules, of course, until my little sister came along because my parents were tired. But anyway, yes, just interactions and experiences, um, being seen through a different set of eyes, perspective. So you think growing up in the same house, you have all the same beliefs and systems and all that, and that's not true. My brother has had very different experiences from home and out in the world. So he, I like to say he is way more worldly than I am.
Huh?
Based on the experiences he's had with many different people. And so that has created his impressions and beliefs of how specific groups of people show up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, if you want to know if you're carrying guilt, I mean, basically, if you just look at what are my desires? What is it that I really want? And then you ask yourself, how far from that am I? The distance between where you want to be in your heart and where you are in your day-to-day experience is mostly filled with all of the reasons why you can't have or do not deserve what's in your heart. Um, and as terrible as that might sound, and also kind of unbelievable. I mean, if we hadn't experienced this over and over and over again for both ourselves and our students, then we don't believe it. We know it because it happens over and over 100% of the time. Um, but the good news about that is that if pieces of belief that are in your subconscious are the only thing standing between you and your heart's desires, well, then boom, let's get to work cleaning that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I come to you as a recovering people pleaser.
Yes.
and it's funny because guilt being the topic this week, I was thinking back to, how did that even begin? Where did that start and why? And I felt guilty for who I was and how I looked. And in order for me to have people like me, I felt like I had to please everyone around me.
Mhm. Yeah.
So guilt was like the core reason why I thought I had to buy, either with kind gestures or gifts, the love of
Mm.
people around me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about this a little bit this week, which is why I'm even able to access it right now. Uh, I was always a very curious, um, kind of bright, shiny kid. I didn't believe in can't. It was really like, well, if we want to do something, let's just figure out how and do it. And that wasn't the way everybody in the community where I grew up approached things. And so I could be considered to be a little bit obnoxious because I was curious. I was asking questions that people didn't know the answers to, and to think about the questions might make them feel vulnerable, right? We all can feel vulnerable thinking about things that are actually outside of the scope of our belief system, that we thought we had everything we needed to know. And then somebody asks us a question, we're like, oh my God, I've never even considered that. So that can make us feel like, what else don't I know? And frankly, it can make us feel stupid, which will throw us right into zone one 100% of the time. I
Yes.
didn't know this as a kid. So all I knew was that if I showed up really happy and joyful and curious, people had a tendency to get angry. So I learned very quickly, not consciously, but I learned very quickly that people liked me best if I was a little wounded, if I was struggling a little bit with something, if I had a little bit of a story of woe, then they liked me better than if I came bouncing into the room saying, "Yes, we're alive. Let's take on the world." And, and everybody just looks at you stone faced and you're like, that was not the thing to say. So it was people pleasing in the way of turning myself down and trying to make myself less vibrant. And I say this, and I feel comfortable saying this because I think this is true for all of us. And I think I just, for whatever reason, was a little bit more aware of that process at that time in my life. Yeah. So I think a lot of us, I can almost feel out there, as people listen, there's this kind of like clenching in your lower stomach where you kind of go, oh my God, yeah, I did that. I bounced in happily, and people, what are you so happy about? Right.
I want what
Um,
she's on.
Yeah, I want what she's on. Or you'll find out when you get into the real world, it doesn't
Mhm.
work like that, right? And we hear that from people who have been struggling and carrying a lot of pain and a lot of guilt for their lives. And they tell us how life works. And let me tell you this, yeah, that's how it works if you want pain and struggle like they're having.
Mhm.
But if you want peace and you want to live your heart's desires and you want to make the world into the kind of place that it could be, that you just feel in your bones it could be, then you don't want to follow the same path as the people who are carrying the struggle and pain.
Yeah. I feel like no matter how you cut it, guilt is used to manipulate.
Yeah.
Either you are using it yourself to manipulate situations and to keep you from, again, because it goes back to worth, because your judge is telling you you're not worthy of this. So you manipulate yourself into, I mean, I believed it. I believed I wasn't worthy of it.
Hmm.
I believed I wasn't worthy of love. I believed I wasn't worthy of living a life of joy. I mean, I convinced myself that
Yeah.
I just was not meant to live a life experiencing the love that I desired.
Yes.
And then when I finally stepped out and took the big move to create space for that love to come in, I felt guilty because I did it.
Right. Right. Oh, yes. That brings up the whole thing about selfishness.
Hmm.
Because I was going to say, okay, yeah, maybe you convinced yourself, but you had a lot of help from an entire world and its marketing departments. I mean, read a newspaper, flip on the TV, spend 20 minutes in a classroom. And guilt is so woven into everything in our society that, yes, you took the bait,
Hmm.
but, what does it take to not? I mean, and how would we ever be able to do that as children?
We couldn't. And what does
No.
it take to not? Awareness. That's why we're
Yeah.
here. That's
Yes.
why we're talking about it. That's why we have this
Yes.
show. And
Yeah.
and I will not sit here and say that my life is completely guilt free, but I identify it faster and I work through it.
Yeah. And it actually becomes interesting because when you see something happening, like maybe you have a little bit of a trouble with a relationship, like there's something going on there that's like, I don't know, there's just something that doesn't feel, it just doesn't feel totally open and loving. Like
Mhm,
it feels like there's something getting in the way. Um, the first thing I do now is I go looking for where's my guilt
mhm,
in relationship to this person, because often enough I have found that my guilt, the guilt I'm carrying about what I did or didn't or should or shouldn't have, or blah blah blah. Parents, there's a lot of that, if you have kids. So if you go find where those pockets of guilt are and you bring them up and make peace with them and let them go, you'll find that the relationship is all of a sudden okay, and you never had to have a conversation with anybody about anything.
mm-mm.
Yeah.
No, it's all, everything we talk about, the emotions that we hit and all that stuff, it's all about acknowledging and being aware of how you show up in your life for
Mhm.
you and everyone around you.
Yeah.
So the more aware you are of what you're feeling and going inside and figuring out why you're feeling that way, the healthier you are for you to exist in your everyday life.
Yeah.
The less we depend on accumulating survival techniques to get through the day.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Um, and anytime we're looking for a solution, anytime we're trying to solve a problem with a solution, we're trying to treat a symptom,
Mm,
right? Our society is big on that. And on the left side of this map here, that's what's happening. We've got wounds. We don't know we have wounds. We don't know how to heal our wounds. And so we're trying to treat the symptoms of the wounding. Right? And what we're suggesting and what we're offering is that if you learn to connect with the right hand side of the map, it actually changes, it lifts and changes the integrity of the left side so that you're still full functioning human, but you can have instincts going off without you becoming unconscious.
yes. You don't fall back into the pit.
Right. So it's almost like you're observing. We talk about this a lot. It's almost like you become able to be like, wow, there's a lot going on in me right now. And, I'm curious about where that's coming from, but you're not in it. Like it's not sucking you down like quicksand. You're just noticing this is happening and you're able to stay kind of above it. um, Not spiritual bypassing, but just to be in this consciousness where you're at peace with the fact that, yes, you have all four quadrants within you. You have all of these different consciousness experiences within you, and none of it's good or bad. It just is.
Mhm,
And the more you understand the four quadrants and you understand how they influence your thoughts and feelings and behaviors and consequently results, right? The more you understand that, the more choice you have in terms of, when you find yourself spinning out and unable to sleep because you're in zone two and you can't quiet your mind. If you're aware of that, just the awareness, oh, look at me, I'm in zone two. You know what? I'm going to make peace with that. And tomorrow I'll take a look at it. Zoom, you're in zone three, sleepy time.
mhm. And that's what takes you to zone 3. Once you
Mhm.
can identify it, you be at peace wherever you are with it. Do you want to stay here or do you want to change it?
Right.
Whichever decision, there is no right or wrong.
Mm-mm.
Be at peace with either decision. And then when you can be at peace, you're in zone 3.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's very interesting because when I started using this, Kris has been working on this for years and you know, working through it in her own life and creating different versions of how to share it. And when I was invited into this, I was amazed at how gentle the process was, to the fact where when it hit me, okay, these are zone 1 behaviors. I don't have to take it personally and beat myself up for having them.
Yes.
There is a reason I have them. And
Yes.
being aware that there's a reason, okay, let's find out why.
Hmm.
And when I could get to the origin of it, it took the emotion out of it. It was like, okay.
Yeah, because yes, because inevitably you find that it was innocent enough.
Hmm.
You know, it was a young child drawing conclusions about their world with very limited information. And generally, the information being shared or being acted out was being acted out by people who didn't realize that this dynamic was happening. Right. So it's like the lack of awareness educating the unaware.
Hmm.
And we just keep adopting this stuff. And then we tell ourselves, oh, I'm bad for not knowing what I don't know. um, which is, of course, so we beat ourselves up, which gives us the shame and the guilt and the fear and all the things and keeps us in that running back to that zone one experience when really what we're talking about is giving yourself the grace, as Judy said before, to say, I was a kid.
Hmm.
How could I have known? And now that I do know, and this is the thing, now that we do know, are we willing, because we don't have to be,
Hmm.
are we willing to take responsibility for our experiences and find out how freaking fantastic we are?
Yeah. Do we have the courage to look beyond it and see what's there?
Yeah.
And see what's there. And a big one for me was when I realized when I was exhibiting the zone one emotions, when I was in the heat of it, whether it was an argument with someone else, conflict with my daughter, when I could recognize I was in zone one, I could recognize they were too. And
Yes.
there was nothing good going to come of it. So you
Yes.
walk away, take a breath, regroup,
Yeah.
So if you're guilting yourself, if someone, blaming is shaming. It is, period. So if you're blaming yourself, you're shaming yourself. If someone is blaming you for something, they're shaming you for something. Look
Hmm.
into it. And we're talking about taking responsibility. I'm not saying that I've never done anything in my life to hurt someone else's feelings. I have.
Hmm.
I can remember back in the day, some of it was intentional. Not a lot of it.
Yeah.
I wasn't a monster, but much of it was unintentional.
Hmm.
So you take responsibility for how you show up. That's also responsibility for how you influence and affect other people.
Yeah. And I like sometimes I could be kind of monstrous. I mean, I've pulled up some past experiences where I was quite monstrous and I would be saying, I'm a good person. I don't know why this kind of thing happens to me. Meanwhile, I would be intentionally being manipulative, or hurting people's feelings. But again, it was on that foundation of I had a lot of unacknowledged pain.
Mhm.
Right? So
Yep.
it wasn't about wanting to hurt other people. It was about wanting to avoid feeling my own pain. And that's what I had learned, was that somehow I had learned that if I hurt other people, I won't feel my own hurts. It's not true,
No.
but it is exhibited. It must be in our, cartoons or something, because it's commonly we've drawn the conclusion that, you know what, you're hurting me, so fine, I'm just going to hurt you and then we're going to be fair and square. It's an interesting idea, but all it does is condemn all of us to living in zone 1, which is frankly, sea otters can achieve a higher level of consciousness than zone 1, than humans that are in zone 1. And think about when you've been in a fight with somebody, right? You're raging, you're saying mean things, they're saying hurling mean things back. And then all of a sudden one of you goes like, what are we fighting about? This is what I mean, right? So it's not to criticize us. It's to merely say that when we get into zone 1, our hurts start speaking for us and they're not nice because they've been hurting for a long time. And it's not the way zone 1 works. Those hurts are not processing through our logical mind or our rational mind, where we can say, like, yes, this is a healthy way to express this that will bring us toward a better relationship. We just start hurling stuff
Mhm.
and kind of saying, well, I didn't do it because I had no control. And when we're in zone 1, it's true. We don't have control until we know there's a zone 1.
Right.
And then all of that nonsense stops. And we really don't have to just be hurting one another and then wondering why we don't feel connected and loved.
Right. And how powerful is it to be able to say, that's my pain talking?
Yeah.
That's my pain
Yeah.
talking. And not sometimes, many times, the pain is from past experience, doesn't even have anything to do with what's currently going on.
Yeah.
And it needed to be expressed. It needed to be released because it's pain that we've stuffed down. And that's when we talk about, being able to express the guilt, the pain, the shame, all those zone 1 emotions from a zone 3. When we're aware that that's our pain talking and we give it the freedom to speak, not in detriment of anyone else, just
Right.
allowing our pain to have a voice.
Yeah.
And holding the space for that. That's where healing occurs.
Yeah. And what you said is so important in terms of not hurting, letting it have a voice without hurting other people or without hurting anyone. And it's like
Mhm.
not hurting anybody else, but not hurting yourself.
Right.
Right? So we can actually speak the truth, whatever the truth is, and we practice this all the time. We can speak the truth in a way that is kind and respectful and hurts no one.
Right.
And when we do that truth, that sometimes there's pain connected to that truth, that pain goes away because we just acknowledged this was a truth that I experienced and I was wounded by it. And now I'm going to look at it and I'm going to own it. I'm going to say, I don't want to carry the pain anymore. And the pain says, okay, and off it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's extremely powerful. It's
Yeah.
extremely powerful once you realize and embrace the fact that everything is a choice.
Hmm.
Everything is a choice. And that's what, being in zone 3, intuition allows you to see. When we say you step back and see what's occurring, it reminds you, it's that pause that reminds you you have a choice. Do I want to
Yeah.
stay in this or do I want to choose to move out of it? Because like Kris and I have talked about in Masterful U, we talk about, these 4 zones. It's not you go and create your concrete castle in one of them. We're healing. So it's a constant spiral flow. Can you jump around from one to the other? Does it have to be zone 1, 2, 3, then 4? No. It goes all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And that's why zone 3, she's sitting up on, he is sitting up on a cliff because it is from zone 3 that you can actually see, oh, all of what I'm experiencing right now is in the contents of my own mind.
Yeah.
The thoughts, feelings, beliefs, etc. And that we can actually go through an inventory and move things around and put in things that make us feel good and be good, healthy, happy. Yeah.
Perfect. So, the topic of the show is calling out guilt so we can breathe. Just being that first step is awareness. We say that, I think we've said it in every show. That first step is awareness. Recognize where it is in your life. Recognize who is inflicting that guilt upon you. Is it you doing it to yourself? Are you allowing others to do it to you? Really, be the spectator and see where it's happening. See how often it surfaces in your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And how it works to prevent you from being who and where you want to be.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we got the time to wrap.
Look at us.
Notice.
We're doing good today.
Yeah.
So I am your co-host, Judy Forder. I'm here with Kris Burke, and we are the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show. And you can find us at Masterful U at www.masterfulu.com, masterfulu.com. And what do we have? There are 3 ways. If you're tired of struggling with the same old problems and worries, listen in on our weekly show to find results. There are 3 different ways you can engage. Showing up here for the show, which is free, We have workshops, and we also have a 12-week program called Own Your Experience.
Yeah. And go to Masterful U and check out under our programs, check out the Own Your Experience program, because we're doing a special summertime series, which a lunchtime summertime series. So I think that'll be, a lot of fun. And wouldn't it be great to get back to the fall, like after Labor Day, and to be like, wow, I'm really feeling comfortable in my skin. I'm ready for, another year of being me. In fact, looking forward to it.
Perfect. And if you like what you hear here and you think the what we offer would be helpful to others, please remember to like, comment, and share.
Yeah. Oh, good job, Judy. And subscribe and subscribe.
We're
Yeah.
working on it. We're getting this whole mojo down.
We're doing great. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. And
Thank you,
we'll
Judy.
see you next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.